Вітаю, і цей брифінг ми присвячуємо.
Good afternoon. We are dedicating this briefing to another portion of lies and propaganda from the aggressor state, which does not hide its intentions to destroy Ukraine as a state through the mouths of its officials. So, the Speaker of the lower house of the State Duma, Volodin, in his statement explicitly states that the ultimate goal is the destruction of Ukraine as a state. His conditions are as follows. Either the Kiev regime surrenders on Russia's terms, or Ukraine will cease to exist as a state. This thesis is also supported by Russian propagandists on the Russia Today channel. Roman Antonovsky, who was introduced as a publicist and writer, says, "Denazification of Ukraine must mean its Russification, the destruction of political Ukrainian identity, and the return of Russian identity to the residents of the liberated territories." That is, the thesis that the Russian regime is allegedly protecting the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine and does not intend to question Ukraine's sovereignty, as they have been saying on international platforms over the past week, is a lie, and this is confirmed by the latest fakes spread by Russian propaganda. By the way, the voices of the propagandists were joined by a former Ukrainian politician and now a man accused of state treason, Viktor Medvedchuk. It is hard to imagine that he used to hold briefings here and run the office of the president, and now he is a propagandist for the idea that Ukraine should be torn apart. Medvedchuk published an article in the Argumenty and Fakty, a ceasefire and demarcation, as it was with West and East Germany or Korea, seems like a sensible idea. In other words, Medvedchuk directly questions the thesis of Ukraine's territorial integrity and proposes to divide the country into several entities. He also lies about how Ukraine fights the Russian language and culture with Nazi methods, and propaganda everywhere calls for the murder of Russians. It was the Russians who came to the Ukrainian state to kill both Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking Ukrainians, and it is Russia that is committing genocide on the territory of the Ukrainian state. Meanwhile, the crisis of propagandists who would defend the ideological framework that Russia needs is obvious, and it is trying to attract discredited politicians, including people who are not shaking hands within the entire civilized world. Russian propaganda quotes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his visit to Russia. According to RIA Novosti, Kim Jong-un said at a meeting with Putin that Russia has risen to a sacred fight to defend its sovereignty. The DPRK has always supported and will support all decisions of the President Putin. Thus, Russian propaganda is trying to justify the war that Russia is waging on the territory of Ukraine with the help of this politician, who is a recognized exile and sponsor of terrorism around the world. Meanwhile, Russian war propagandists are trying to justify strikes on civilian infrastructure, and propagandist Kots, who is known in Ukraine for his fakes connected to the PMC Wagner, is now giving his interpretation of the strike on the Odessa hotel in the city with the same name, which stood and was destroyed next to the seaport. Kots claims the Russian Ministry of Defense said that a strike was made at night on the dislocation points of foreign mercenaries and training points of subversive groups of the armed forces of Ukraine. This is a lie, because the Odessa hotel has not been in operation for more than 10 years. There is neither water supply nor electricity, and therefore it could not be the point of dislocation, and the strike proves once again that it makes no difference to the aggressor state whether to destroy military or civilian facilities. Meanwhile, in order to justify the lack of progress on the front line, Russian politicians are once again repeating the thesis that they are losing not to Ukraine but to NATO countries. This time the thesis was picked up by one of the State Duma deputies, former Speaker of the Upper House of the Federal Assembly, Sergei Mironov. Everyone will understand that it is not Zelensky who is at war with us. It is the NATO bloc that is waging the war with the hands of the Ukrainian people. Of course, this is nonsense. Just like Mironov's other thesis that Western experts are studying the biological material of the Slavic people to create weapons that can only be used against our nation, that is, the Russian nation. And further, the research continues in biolaboratories in Ukraine. This fake is more than a year and a half old, and Russian propaganda continues to replicate it, although it seems that it is no longer able to impress even the Russian audience itself, as they have repeated this thesis so many times. Just as often they repeat the thesis that the church and the army are fighting Ukraine together, emphasizing the sacred nature of the war for Russians, which once again proves the need to eliminate centers of Russian-influenced church propaganda in Ukraine. So, what did Kirill, the Patriarch of Moscow, say? Orthodox citizens of Russia must stand up in defense of the motherland so that the country can emerge victorious from the battle unleashed by the forces of evil. Today we need the mobilization of everything and everyone. The army, political forces, and of course the church must be mobilized. First of all, to pray for our authorities, the army, as well as to be there on the front line. So, this once again confirmed by the Russian Orthodox Church and Putin, and the Kremlin and the Russian army are one and the same. Well, there is one more primitive fake that has been thrown in by Russian propaganda through many of its propaganda channels, by both Solovyov's channel and Putin in Telegram channel, that there was an incident allegedly taking place during the Ukrainian delegation's stay in New York at the UN General Assembly. Here's what Solovyov says, referring to the media. The media spread information that a member of Zelensky's security service got into a drunk brawl in a local bar during his stay in New York. This is accompanied by a video with the logo of the well-known American publication USA Today. But this very publication, USA Today, made a special exposing publication stating that they had never made such articles, that this video was fake, that it was an edited video sequence where the official chronicles of the Ukrainian president's visit to New York were mixed with a video of some fight that really took place in New York, but many years ago and had nothing to do with current events. This video has been widely circulated by dozens of Russian propaganda media, but it is completely falsified, and the incidents mentioned did not take place during the Ukrainian delegation's stay in the United States. At the end of the briefing, I have to draw attention to another fake, which, at the suggestion of Russian propagandists, was picked up by Ukrainian anonymous channels, including those associated with the former president of Ukraine, who dreams of returning to power. And this fake refers to the fact that there is allegedly a criminal case against the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny. This information is a total lie. There is no criminal case or criminal proceedings against Valery Zaluzhny in Ukraine. He is neither a witness nor a suspect or accused. This information is fiction from the first to the last letter, but this fake has been made and is being massively replicated, including through social networks and by word of mouth, through television channels associated with the former president of Ukraine. The purpose of this fake is clear: to sow discord within Ukrainian society, as well as to oppose the Ukrainian military and political leadership. Once again, I emphasize not to trust propagandists, regardless of whether they are of Russian origin or of any other. To trust only official sources of information and to trust the Ukrainian military and political leadership. If you live outside of Ukraine, there is a Freedom TV channel for the Russian-speaking audience and a UATV channel for the English-speaking audience. Watch them, subscribe and share this media. We will conclude this briefing with the traditional call to trust only Ukrainian official sources of information. Goodbye.